performance and experimental theater and music and all of that. And the role that identity-based there's a lot of identity-based performance that came from the Bay Area at really critical moments that I think also really affect what happened in dance. And I think, you know, Rhodessa Jones makes a certain kind of performance, or actually a few different kinds of performance, but she was also in, you know, one of these hippie collectives in Berkeley in the 70s, do you know what I mean? So you have a lot of different ways that people were being influenced by different kinds of work to make what we have now. And I think that even, you know, in terms of non-dance culture, I think that queer theater, queer performance, queer nightclub culture has continually influenced dance only because of the huge number of gay men that are in contemporary and modern dance, and then what their relationship is to coming anytime they come to the studio or the world from these multiple contexts. And then I think that also just the way that spreads out to many other people, men, women, and now the people who are neither men nor women, who are now like part of the cultural zeitgeist that is San Francisco. So.
Anybody else? Somebody else?
I just had a quick question for Keith about those people that you mentioned that came from Europe. Did you take them to see people that you felt were part of that legacy and they still didn't recognize it? Or was it just that those people are so spread out that they didn't manage to find them? Or if I understood your story correctly?
It's a longer story, but the gist of it is that when they got to San Francisco, the most central place for contemporary dance in San Francisco was ODC. That's where we've centralized all the resources for space. And it's about to get bigger. So they called the head of ODC, and Brenda Way curated an entire day that she thought would be diverse, and they watched 10 different companies for half an hour each. Then they were kind of freaked out on modern dance. They were calling people up and saying, we think we're in the 50s, what happened? So then what happened was they called Anna Halprin and said, hi, Alain Bouffard said we could call you, where are people? And Anna Halprin's assistant told them to call me and Jess, and then we put together a different program for them, and we showed some other people. But it wasn't like there was any single space or any single curating. It was, again, this centralized, go through Brenda, go through ODC kind of world. So that's what happened with that particular trip.
Can I just ask, could we talk a little, could we talk a little more about that? I think that the situation with ODC is a sensitive one because it obviously, it has centralized so many resources, and there's plenty of people who are teaching there and taking class there, and it has been a huge boon in many ways, but it's also, you know, created a lot of a ripple effect throughout the dance community. And I just wondered if, you know, some of you guys could maybe comment on how you think it's changing the climate here.
I just wanted to tag on to that. Because I remember dancing here, I lived here and danced here in the early 90s, and when I left to go to graduate school and stuff, there was this huge scene of people dancing, I don't know, rolling on the ground, wearing, I don't know, it was just messy and a lot of wrestling, and I don't know, it was just such a different scene. And when I came back here in 2004, I came back and everyone, it was like orchestras or something, everyone was dancing with these beautiful feet, and it just, it's lovely, but I just thought, did something happen in like 10 years? I don't know, it feels like there was this huge shift, and I wasn't here for that, but maybe it has to do with the .com or things that went on, but I'm curious about that too, like what Keith is saying, that where is that home, where is that place, or...
And I think, you know, the same way that you're saying that, you know, queer nightclub culture and these other aspects of the Bay Area are influencing dance, I think space also does. So, you know, and the environment at ODC, and this is not to, again, it's a sensitive issue, but it has a very specific feeling when you go into the building that I think influences the way that people think about the dance that's getting made there or getting rehearsed there. And so diversity of space, I think, is a huge issue in the Bay Area right now, it seems to me. There's a lot of small spaces opening up, it seems, and it's exciting. And even since I've been working with InDance, you know, we have a classified ad section of studio rental space that seems to grow each month, which is exciting as we get further and further from the .com bomb. So that's a good thing and an exciting thing. But I don't know, with the exception of counterpoles, I don't see it. I don't see dance cultures being created in these spaces so much. And that's where it becomes a little, it's just a question mark about what it will look like in the future.
I just wanted to talk to respond to you about the space question specifically, and it does bleed into economics, I'm sorry. But what's interesting to me is I feel like this is maybe also true politically, meta-politically, in terms of, our president and all sorts of things. I feel like we almost haven't gotten far enough on the other side of it, meaning that we haven't gotten to the moment of desperation. We've, in a certain way, it's like, okay, we have ODC, it's not so crazy expensive that people can't go there, so they do go there because it is there. But they haven't gotten to the point of like, holy fuck, I need to just rehearse in my kitchen, I mean, some people are, but I feel like there are, and I do, believe me, sometimes it's necessary, but I feel like there's a certain comfortableness that remains that we haven't gotten to the point where we're so uncomfortable that we need to actually make things happen, because I feel like you can make a piece on nothing, but once you're kind of on that track of, oh, I'm getting this grant, and then I'm going to rehearse at this studio, and da-da-da-da-da, it's like you get stuck in that little bit of track. And not this to suggest that we should get less funding, but I just wonder about this kind of moment of break where the community's able to say, oh, wow, we actually need to do something, rather than kind of getting by on what's existing and what's being offered to us, to take more agency in shifting that. So this isn't exactly what we were originally talking about, sorry.
But I mean, there are spaces like Common Post and Intersection for the Arts and the Malanga Casco Arts Center, and I mean, these spaces exist and people are doing work, and it's really about what people are interested in doing in their own process. I mean, that's what I feel more than in the space. I don't think ODC, that particular venue, dictates what people do in that space. And if there's a feeling that is not creative to, or is counter to what they would want to do, there are other spaces to do that. There's Dance Mission, there's John Sims, there's, what is the City Ballet space? City Dance Studios. There's so many. I mean, I agree. I just see more and more, and more about performance. I mean, I see more of a critical thing. You said, why do people feel a need to perform? Some people are just about process. Some people process for a very long time. There are artists like Della Davison who continues to rework and does stuff. Eric Cooper goes for a long time. I process for a long time. I do a piece once every 5 years, and I have one piece I did for 10 years, just kept doing it, reworking, and then gave it away, reworked it again. So there are people, and I don't necessarily have to show all the time. So, and I'm not the only artist that does that. There are a lot of us that just like to create when we feel the spirit or need to do that. But at the same time, to continue to do work, sometimes it's gratifying to share. You've got dancers who want to share. You have audience that wants to be enlightened or inspired. So there's an importance in that. And I'm concerned as a presenter about performance spaces disappearing. and or being too expensive for